Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootleggers, shills, desolate serfs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome, and let's go to Brazil. And now this coup is apparently over for all intents and purposes, and President Rousseff has finally been impeached. And I did a video before on the situation in Brazil, and found it very complicated. I wasn't sure what to think about the different charges that were going on both sides because I hadn't delved into the intricacies of Brazilian society that much of late. Been keeping an eye on developments, and then this happened, and it's a soft coup, and it was hard to suss out because we had millions of people in the streets, both pro and anti-government, and we had accusations coming from all sides. But now that all the details have come out, it looks like a pretty interesting story, and it does indeed look like a coup happened, and that's one of the things that makes this the most interesting to me. Is here, a lot of pundits were talking about the strength and the future prospects of the BRICS countries, of which Brazil is a member of. And they've had a very strong economy up until several years ago. And then this changeover to this Rousseff government, and one of the things that led to this unrest. But now we see the soft coup happen in Brazil, and now it looks like Brazil could end up being more in line with the empire, and perhaps in the future untangling its relationship with the BRICS. It's hard to say at this point, but when you look at the players, that's what reveals that perhaps we have a coup that happened. First of all, we find that leaked tapes from WikiLeaks show that Temer, who is now the acting president, and his cronies set up this coup in Brazil. And Temer was a part of the opposition party and has never been able to be legally elected, so an unlikely candidate to turn up, ending up leading the government after this coup. So the fact that he jockeyed into position is pretty interesting. So Brazil's acting president also was an embassy informant for the U.S. intelligence, and these details put together start adding up to the smell of conspiracy. He communicated to the U.S. Embassy in Brazil via telegram, obviously wanting to keep a low profile. And this was back in 2006. So 10 years later, he's still operating as a pro-American element, and now he ends up leading the government. Rousseff needed to be ousted to derail the corruption investigation, and that's part of this picture that's so fascinating, is that a lot of what's going on in the soft coup is necessitated by the fact they needed to protect the rest of the government who's been involved in this corruption scandal. And like I said before, well over 200 members, 300 members actually have been investigated in the lower house involved in this corruption scandal. And if they can just change the head of the snake, then they don't have to shed their skin. All these criminals that are in their parliament and in their Congress. So one official, Juca, resigned just hours after this tape was released, one of Temer's cronies. So obviously there's a certain amount of guilt there if somebody's willing to resign over these charges. And like I say, I think this is very fascinating to see, because they used legalities and technicalities and procedures that were used to affect regime change. There was no need for a coup or a military involvement or anything volatile or dramatic at all. It was all a bureaucratic transition. So in that sense, that's at the heart of why I find this so fascinating, this soft coup that happened there, obviously involving the United States. Leaked tapes show that the military was on board with this transition to this new government. So that's another reason why we know it's a coup. And the fact that the press, the media, very powerful and owned by these same elitist families that run the government, run the military there, and run the press, they all wanted Rousseff out too. So there was a lot of factors in Brazil that would ultimately lend themselves to this soft coup happening. And then Temer himself has also appointed ministers who themselves are under investigation. So all the criminal element in the part of the government that's under investigation permeates it, and Temer certainly is no change of pace, and in fact he's involved in as well, and continues to appoint ministers who are involved in this corruption scandal. So like I say, we shall watch and see that if over time, now that Rousseff's been impeached and the new government's in power, if all these corruption charges end up going away. And some of the most corrupt politicians in the country right now are part of this new coalition. And the government now, also one of the big changes that have been made, which should also bespeaks of this soft coup, is that Brazil's top Wall Street favorite to lead the central bank, and his name is Ilan Goldfond, widely praised on Wall Street for his orthodox approach. And he will now be heading the Brazilian central bank. So that's very telling to when the government changes and the president is impeached, all of a sudden they change the head of the central bank as well. And they want a constitutional amendment now to give the central bank, quote, more technical autonomy, unquote. And so that's certainly the kind of wording we find if we're going to find some more, find a central bank that will end up actually having less autonomy, but will have more technical autonomy, if you catch my drift. And there's public spending caps being talked about, and pension reforms and monetary easing starting last July. It was scheduled. And so these are all the kind of things that we would expect from a Wall Street run country, and it looks like that's the way Brazil's headed. So anyway, I just wanted to follow up that whole story on Brazil and confirm the fact that it does indeed look like it was a coup. Rousseff was impeached. The corrupt government will be protected. The media and the military will have their interests protected. The central bank will change its policies. We're going to find more austerity, and we could find the country of Brazil falling more into the boot of the empire. So we'll be looking for signs of that continuing. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too?